in my teens, I realized like, all right, I need to get a grip on my mental health. So through a variety of good friends, family I had talked to, therapy, personal experience being outside, I started to get more of a grip on my mental health. And I believe that coincided. I don't know exactly if it which caused the other, but I know they coincided with each other, of just finding out who I was.
Hey friends, welcome back to A Different Perspective. In today's episode, Davin and I will be interviewing Mario Folino, a very compassionate and intelligent man of many talents. We hope you enjoy his experience and getting to meet him, and enjoy today's episode.
Welcome everyone. We have our first guest on A Different Perspective. His name is Mario, and he's an experienced personal trainer, fitness professional, and an advocate of sustainable living and fitness practices. Check out his Instagram handle at biglifts_biggerheart in the description. You'll find on his Instagram a number of educational, wholesome, and unique videos learning how to work with your hands and learn about what it truly means to be human. Mario, welcome to the show. How you doing?
Good. Thank you guys for having me. I'm really excited.
Absolutely. And we're excited to have you learn a little bit more about what you got going on and what you're about. So give us a little intro of yourself and where you come from, your background, and how you got interested and engaged in fitness.
Okay, yeah. So a little bit about me. I grew up in North Central Illinois. What used to be a little bit kind of out in the country. Now it's somewhat absorbed by Chicago. So if people look it up, they'll kind of see now it's a city. But when I was growing up, I had a single mom, and I played some sports, but I was more interested in self-direction and things I like to do. And I liked fitness. I didn't necessarily have a ton of equipment at the time. I did save up and buy some. So I started getting into fitness right around middle school, really, to help me deal with some things that were going on in my life at the time. And I found that when I didn't have something, just either from a cost or simply just a location perspective, I was like, you know what, like, might as well try to make it. What's the worst that could happen? So I really got into creating a lot of my own equipment, and that led me into the outdoors, which became a very large part of my life. And those two were always intertwined for me, which is kind of where my Instagram comes from. It's a lot of outdoors and fitness intertwined. So throughout the years, throughout high school, I got much more into the outdoors and building my own equipment and carpentry and woodworking later from that. But fitness to me was a way to express my creativity while also challenging myself. And the outdoors was similar to that in the way that it made me feel. And I really enjoyed that. I really enjoyed that self-direction and that just the opportunity to make the things that I saw in my head real. So as time went on, once you get the ball rolling, it always gets a little bit better. You can always, once you figure out one concept, you can kind of build on those. So throughout 5 or 6 years, I had really developed a strong connection to the outdoors and fitness. And I saw them really, I guess not as the same thing, but they kind of fell into the same category for me. And that's self-directed, self-challenging way to express who I was. And at 17, I ended up, I basically just said, you know what, like, I don't want to be in Illinois anymore. It just wasn't for me at the time. So I headed basically as far as I could west until I hit the ocean. I hit the ocean in Seattle. And I went to an outdoors school there for a year and received several vocational certifications. And fitness was always part of that as well. I was just actually working in the outdoor industry now and adding fitness to that, which I really enjoyed. So I was working in the fitness or the outdoor industry, and fitness was, again, it's just kind of not a hobby, but a side thing for me. And then it kind of flipped. I went to WSU 2 years later, after I had managed some gyms for a while and worked at a ski resort. And at WSU, it kind of flipped. Outdoors became my hobby and fitness became my profession, as I received more certifications to work in the fitness industry. And as Cole knows, I started working with, I don't know if he wants me to say his name on here, but he's he doesn't like that kind of stuff, but working with our strongman program here and under Ramon. Sorry, I get a little nervous on camera. I mess things up once in a while. So if you see me on Instagram, you're gonna see me smiling. I might stutter a few times. That's just how I am. I'll just tell you guys on it here now. I started working with Ramon at WSU. I worked there as guest services, and then I also worked membership, and I had eventually worked my way up to being a trainer, which I really enjoyed. It gave me the opportunity to not only express myself and how I train people, but I believe there's a certain threshold and point in your life where your hobbies and your interests, the only way to really continue to expand on them in a way that you're breaking down barriers and learning new things is to actually teach them. So I got to start teaching these concepts to people and transferring what I learned in the outdoors into the gym and vice versa to help people. And I really enjoyed that. And strongman was a really, really big catalyst for me in that, because strongman was, and ironically, I actually didn't know much about strongman until I went to WSU. I had like heard of it, but I was just so busy at the time. I hadn't really done the proper research into it. But, lifting rocks and lifting logs and heavy weights and crazy concepts that you don't really see too much, and kind of just out of bounds stuff that you would never expect to see in a commercial gym. I just thought that was really interesting, and I kind of took off with that. And yeah, so now I coach people in strongman. I do some general training as well, and I work in the outdoor industry currently, so that's I split my time between those two. But that's just a little bit about me. I'm sure we can, if you guys have any questions, I can expand on it, but that's the condensed version, I would guess.
Yeah, no, that's great, man. You definitely have a really unique background. There's a lot of different experiences there. I mean, it's definitely cool to hear about. I didn't know a couple of those things. So I want to talk a little bit more about like your dive into strongman kind of as a result of your experiences with outdoors and all of that. Like when you started making all of your own equipment, was it already sort of, were you trying to make like standard gym equipment, or were you just making stuff to just lift in this sort of an unnatural way already, or what's that word I'm looking for? Unconventional way.
Vegetable. Yeah, so I would say it was a bit of both. Part of it was just simply picking heavy objects up and moving them in a variety of ways, whether through logs or stone or metal or whatever I would find around me. And obviously that's a big part of strongman. It's almost all of strongman. And also part of me was trying to push some boundaries and try some new concepts with because when I got certified in being a personal trainer and certified in strongman, and as I continue to get more certifications here, I learn more about how the body works mechanically and anatomically and things like that. I try to work within those bounds, obviously, to not do anything that could, cause damage and stuff like that. And some things I do take from a gym, deadlift, for example, you can deadlift a lot of things and pick them up, but most of the time, most objects are not a straight bar. So you have your Atlas stones, your log lifts. But I did, like, for example, I took a piece of maple is about 6 feet long by about probably 5 inches in diameter. Drilled some eye hooks into it, used carabiners originally, and then I just kind of went to chain after a while for safety reasons. And then just took some other eye hooks and put them in logs, and I was like, let's see if I can make a deadlift. And I mean, yeah, that was definitely something I stole from a standard gym. And after a while, it kind of became, all right, what are the main motions that I like to do? Which was, I guess your deadlift, your squat, and your bench. And bench is probably the hardest thing to recreate. So it's probably the thing I don't do that much in the outdoors. I do a lot of overhead pressing when it comes to outdoor fitness. Bench is a little bit, I don't want to say dangerous, because I hate to use, I like to tell people, yes, this can be dangerous, but I believe if you're properly trained and you go through you dot your I's and cross your T's, most things are fairly safe. But bench is a little tough because you're not using metal generally, at least when I'm using like outdoor stuff, or if I am at scrap metal. So I don't like to put anything above my chest, because the risk of, not necessarily the risk of it falling, that's not something I'm as worried about. There's always a chance something could snap, And one of the biggest injuries in the outdoors people just actually don't really know because it's not as popularized is impaling yourself. Tripping, falling. Wood is very sharp if you are propelling your whole body weight down on top of it, or if it has something mechanically shooting it into you. So bench is probably the thing that I haven't really taken from the gym and moved to the outdoors, but I do a lot of overhead pressing in the outdoors, a lot of squat, a lot of deadlift, a lot of carries, things like that. But so those are things I would say I've taken from the gym, and then some stuff like the stones I've lifted, and possibly like the homemade Viking press, where I just took a forked tree and stuck a very large log in it basically, and hooked something onto it. That's more of just a natural motion of something that would be a lever, and that's something I try to use a lot, is like levers and pulleys and stuff. So that's more when I start creating my own stuff, I would say.
Yeah. Yeah, it sounds like you really like the idea of getting strong through the use of tools rather than very specific like weight training implements.
Yes, I believe tools are much more important than specific things. I try to avoid, I mean, yeah, like when you get to a certain point, I think it's awesome. Like at advanced level and at a very beginner level, I think it's important to have specific things that you can show people to build confidence, or at an advanced level to recreate and try to push yourself to actually recreate something that might be very difficult to recreate naturally. But I think when you're given tools and no exact end result, like no expected end result, you can usually go above and beyond what you expected you can do, because you take what's in your head and you make it real. And just like a muscle, your mind, when you challenge it, you force it to push its boundaries and grow, your creativity follows. And if you push yourself to be creative, you will eventually become more creative, whether you like it or not. Just like if you bench press twice a week for 5 years, you will have a stronger chest. Just if you force yourself maybe even an hour every week to be creative, just give yourself something and have an idea of what you want to do, you will become more creative. And that's something I learned along that path. And I think it's something that sticks with us for life. It's somewhat of an unmasterable skill, which I really enjoy.
Yeah, that's really wise, man.
Yeah. Speaking of being creative and building skills over time, I think with the recent pandemic, people have had to be creative with how they've trained or worked out. And maybe intuitively, with your outdoors background, you were able to take the commercial gym or the barbell access that we might have in our normal gyms and take that outside into your home backyard. What might you tell us about your ideas about getting people outdoors and using their surroundings to not only strength train potentially, but to also maybe provide education into learning how to survive or learning how to thrive in the outdoor environment?
That's a great question. I think the best way to put it is, when you teach people to be comfortable and teach them to relax in new environments, that is about 80% of survival. There's actually somewhat of a night and day between the two different outdoor communities. You have your like very intense survival focused outdoor community, and that's more usually based on some military stuff, which is understandable. If you're in the military, you have very different priorities. I don't believe that carries over to civilian life as well, because to understand the outdoors, to say that you need to survive, is kind of like putting someone in a grocery store and telling them not to starve to death. It's once you understand what's around you, and the more you learn, the less you need to carry and the more comfortable you are. You don't really see it as survival anymore. That's why I very rarely use that term if I don't have to. It just becomes like wilderness living, or just just living, really is what it is. And now to take fitness and help people get into the outdoors, not only do you make them more comfortable being outside as a whole, but you teach them attention to detail. You teach them different aspects about the plants or trees around you. For example, if I was to take a log that was 4 inches in diameter. And now if I took that log to lift weight with, if I had put some sort of weight implement on either side of any uh, log, metal, whatever, it's more about the weight. If I was to make that out of oak, that's a really good tool that I can use for a long time. It would realistically be pretty safe if I built it properly, if it was a good piece of oak. Now, if I was to take that and make that out of basswood, I would probably end up stabbing myself in the throat with a piece of shrapnel. So that attention to detail, once you learn to respect the outdoors and see it as something you need to educate yourself on, it does become less about survival. And same with fitness. Once you teach yourself the concepts, okay, what's a softwood, what's a hardwood, okay, what's a push and a pull, and how are those different? How is a hardwood and a softwood different? What are the universal truths that I can see that will let me know if I'm using my back muscle or my chest muscle? What are the universal truths to tell me if this tree is going to be good lumber, or if it's good firewood, or if it's good carving wood? Once you understand those concepts, you can do really anything. And I think fitness is important with that, because you have to understand yourself to understand the world around you, and vice versa. To understand yourself, you have to understand the world around you, in my opinion. That's just what I believe. Because I don't feel like we can truly understand the human condition if we don't understand where we came from, what we evolved from, the environment and everything that shaped us into who we are today. But I also don't think we can get to that point in ourselves if we don't look at ourselves and understand, like, who am I? Like, what do I like to do? What are my interests? What are things that I can conceptually create and put into the world around me? And that skill will take you anywhere, though. Sales, marketing. And that's another thing that's kind of weird. I don't know, I didn't think of that till I just said it, but like, I used to work in sales and marketing, and all I did was, I'd walk around outside for a couple hours and think, all right, what is a way that I can voice what I'm thinking into the world? And then I look at the world around me and I see the ways that nature expresses itself through, if a disturbed roadside is going to have certain plants. Why does it have those certain plants there? Well, they're nitrogen fixers. They have long tap roots. Those plants are like an alder, for example, that grows in a recently logged area. Alders tend not to live that long. They suck up a lot of water. They fall down. That's carbon and nitrogen into the soil for larger trees to grow, where your cedar forest will come from eventually. So once you teach people to understand themselves and the world around them, and the universal truths that we can practice and prove, which is again a skill. It's not something we just inherently have. It's a skill. The universal truth of gravity. I mean, you don't know gravity's there until you fall down sometimes, I think those two are interconnected. And when we teach people to be more aware of the world around them, they're more aware of themselves. And when they're more aware of themselves, they're more aware of the world around them.
Yeah, I definitely agree, man. It seems like a core piece of your philosophy is like self-efficacy, just being capable of taking care of yourself and taking care of the area around you and the people around you. What, like, did you have a moment, as you were growing up? You said that this outdoor experience kind of started when you were a teenager, especially because you kind of grew up in it. What was there, like, a moment or a time frame in your life where this sort of like coalesced and being like, yeah, these skills, I have enough that, like, I got this. Like, there's always more to learn, but, like, did you ever have that moment, like, I believe in myself right now?
Yes, I would say I always, and not to get too far into it, because I don't want to sidetrack you guys here, but I grew up in an interesting environment. I have to be extremely careful on my phrasing, because a lot of these people are still alive today, obviously, and I have interactions with them. I grew up in a very interesting environment and very interesting circumstances, and I had to be very self-reliant from a young age into how I did things, and necessarily discerning adults as either looking out for me or not looking out for me. And through a lot of trial and error, I started to understand that. So I think I had that understanding going into it. I knew that the the ideas were there in the sense of I can take care of myself. I just need to educate myself on how to do it. And that self-confidence I got through my my early childhood, dealing with certain things with family members and the town around me. That self-confidence was key, because that was really 90% of getting into all this with fitness. Once I was confident in myself that I could do something, I knew the only thing stopping me from doing it was just my level of education and my time invested in. So same with the outdoors. So that I definitely gained more confidence in things I could do. So at 16, for example, I knew I could camp in 32 degrees, so around freezing. And then at 17, I went camping in 52 below zero by myself. Wow. So I understood. That year, I educated myself through personal experience in winter, being outside nearly every day, observing the winter world around me, and then also outside education, like through YouTube. Or YouTube is a big thing for me. I think YouTube is one of the best things that happened to humanity, really ever, in my opinion. I've been able, 95% of the things that I go out and learn that are not personal experience, I learned from YouTube. But yeah, so once I understood, like, okay, I can do this, this is a starting point. So then I didn't focus on summer camping. If I can camp in 32 degrees, I can camp in the summer. What do I need to know to go beyond this? So I looked up Arctic expeditions. I read journals. I read Hudson Bay journals from the trappers who went to Ontario and Nova Scotia and Alberta and Saskatchewan and places like that, where, that's a whole different kind of cold. That's like being on Mars almost. That's a whole different kind of environment. So I figured, all right, let's learn from these people's experiences. And that's kind of what YouTube is to me. It's experiences I haven't had yet that other people have had that I can glean that knowledge from. So I think I always had the understanding I could do it. I just understood to fully make my thoughts a reality, I needed to educate myself on how to do it.
Yeah, I agree. YouTube's definitely incredible. And like, you're touching on this theme that Devin and I have talked about quite a bit. And it's this idea of, your general intuition is really just the combination of your experiences, the things that happen to you and the things that you actively seek to learn, and then synthesizing that information in order to create a decision that gets made. Inherently, everything is a decision of doing something or not doing something. And by educating yourself, you've created a very self-efficacious life, and I like to see that. That's awesome, man.
Thank you.
Devin, did you have something?
Yeah, I kind of want to build off the education aspect, because you're from Illinois, and you described what part you're from, and Cole moved around a bunch growing up. I'm born and raised in Hawaii, and very different environments per se. So our outdoor experiences and maybe the education and lessons we've learned are all vastly different. Kind of a two-part question. Do you think outdoor education should be a part of, curriculums within schooling? And at what point does that start? Does it start before you start attending school? And how does it progress potentially? And then also, for maybe people who live in the city, like New York or LA or very metro areas, how do they get involved in something like that? Do they just pack the car up and go and kind of figure it out? Or like, what types of suggestions, recommendations, resources would you recommend those individuals?
Awesome. I love these questions. That I touch on a lot, to the point where everyone who knows me. So I think outdoor education is as important as any education in school, and in some cases, I dare to say more important. Because it teaches you, if nothing else, it teaches you self-reliance, creativity, and conceptual learning, which those three things will take you anywhere in life. I mean, you could have someone with a PhD in Harvard who doesn't understand that, and not knocking Harvard, that was just the first school that came to my head. And you have another person who understands those three concepts with a high school education. I'll put my money on that high school education every day. Just from the understanding of those three concepts. So I believe it is essential. I don't necessarily think we need to like go the Spartan way and toss 8-year-olds into the wilderness, but I think integrating outdoor education into not, I believe it's like a 1-week program now is somewhat, I don't know if it's required exactly. I've seen a lot of very confusing rules on it, but I do know that a lot of people have gone to like a 1-week outdoor ed camp. And that's not enough. That's just a vacation for kids. And at that point, they're just kind of goofing around, having fun with each other because they don't get to have fun in school as much as they should, in my opinion. And not, I believe teachers are incredible. I believe a lot of teachers do their best. I just think they're working within a system that is not conducive for them to reach their potential or the children's. I believe it should start around pre-K. I've worked with toddlers in the outdoors in Idaho, actually, which I thought was incredible. And those kids, I mean, you can really watch, and I'm trying to think of the best way to phrase this. I learned more about human evolution watching a toddler play with sticks than I've ever learned from a book. Because you can right there watch human evolution. I mean, you watch a toddler, they break a stick, they understand the stick is sharp. Then they start poking things with the stick because it's sharp. And right there you have spears. Like right there you have kid fall in the water once. You understand you don't just walk out on the thin ice and this didn't happen at that school because they know me and I want to be sure that school knows they're very 100% safe. They don't let kids walk out on the water or anything. But another example, I've watched a kid fall in water through ice, only waist deep. He was fine. He understood. He started chucking rocks at the ice to me. He didn't fall in next time. Like, hit it, make sure. I mean, that human evolution is alive and well today. We tend to see it as like a historical or a biological concept when it's a living reality. So, and to, like I said, to understand ourselves, we have to understand the world around us and vice versa. So for these kids to get the proper education they need to fully absorb everything they're going to learn in high school and middle school and college and beyond, I believe it's an absolutely necessary precursor. How exactly that's implemented, I think, does vary. Like you said, it's slightly difficult in the cities the way they're designed today. I think we're going in the right direction with like parks and stuff like that. I don't think they're enough. I believe there's a variety of ways it can be met, and every city's different, so I have to be somewhat vague here. I believe that the way we build our cities has to change, and to facilitate for people in the cities to get outside. I don't think cities can be just cement for 40 miles in any direction. It just doesn't work. I mean, look at coronavirus has showed us that we can't. I mean, look what happened in New York, and thank God, we got that under control there. But I mean, hypothetically, if corona was not that it's not a serious virus, but if it was a virus, that was dropping people like that, I mean, we could have lost millions of people in the course of weeks. Yeah. We can't. It's not natural, and not natural things will not last under natural circumstances. And that's just, to me, I think that's shouldn't be something that's designed in that, and not only in agriculture, but in city design, basically in engineering, I guess would be the best way to put it. So I do think whether we have to do government stuff, like the government has to step in and pay for some of it in the cities, or really how we do it is very different. I think this is one of the few things where the cost will be actually a lot lower for rural areas to get kids outside, because there are rural areas in suburban areas. I mean, even here in Illinois, where pretty much everything is turning to concrete and corn, I can get to something in about 30 to 40 minutes, which for a school is not a far trip on a bus. In the cities, yeah, you have a bit of a different circumstance, whether it's more funding, which I believe the schools need already, but specific funding for this, or we start taking, which I believe is also important, empty plots in the cities that aren't doing anything, especially in areas that have been hit hard by the recession or just bad economic times. I believe it's either the cities, depending on who you talk to and where you go. I believe it is the responsibility to turn those places back into natural environments, whether that's through community gardens, community parks, natural areas, natural resource areas. Um, in here, we call them, what are they called here in Illinois? Just wild space, I think, is one of the technical terms. I don't remember. I'm sorry, I just can't recall it. We have to make the outdoors accessible to everyone, whether they are living in the cities or they're living in the suburbs and they're living in urban areas. And that's part of what I'll be doing with I plan on starting a bison ranch and using it as an outdoor center for kids. And one of the biggest parts of that is going to be taking kids from the city and giving them a place to come out for multiple days at a very, very low cost, if next to nothing cost, if possible, to the schools. And part of the location design of that will be towards larger cities, so I can have those kids come out from larger cities, and adults. I would like to run adult camps. There's a little more thought and a little more particular ways that has to go about with adults as compared to kids, but I think it's extremely important. And I don't think adding one class of outdoor education, whether it's blocked up in an hour per week or a 5-day school week, or if it's like I think elementary classes are like 20 to 30 minutes long now. I know every state's different, so whether it's adding that class in per day, or if it's just, even if it's just getting kids outside longer for recess, which is a 1 hour class a week, I guarantee I would put all of my money on the fact that if they taught those kids 1 hour of outdoor skills a week and gave them an extra hour for recess throughout the day, they would see those skills in action, because it's just natural. It's just natural for those kids to do that. So yes, I do believe it's extremely important, and I believe it should, just like anything else, build on itself throughout high school. But I don't think anyone should leave high school without a strong understanding of self-reliance, emergency survival, which is a term I'll use, which is if you're in an emergency, how to survive that particular emergency, as compared to just outdoor survival, because again, to me, that term doesn't make a whole lot of sense. So emergency survival, self-reliance, a basic understanding of tools and how to work with tools, and then also permaculture, which is you might know it as like sustainable agriculture, greenhouses, things like that. The Three Sisters is a really popular example. I don't think people should leave high school without that understanding, and I believe it should be mandated. And I believe it's also something important for parents to teach, but I don't think a lot of parents are in the position to do that right now. And yeah, I do think for cities, we either have to redesign the way we do cities, or we have to figure out, we're just the United States alone. We have so much outdoor space and so much financial strength, relatively speaking, that I don't see a way that we cannot do some sort of state or local level where we provide low-cost opportunities for people to get into the outdoors. How exactly that looks, I do think will vary.
You bring up I really want to dive into that topic about the idea of city redesign. There's an experiment that somebody did a while ago, and it's a microbiology experiment where they took a map of the United States and they found all of the major resource areas, because just inherently any living being coalesces around easily accessible resources, water, food, etc. And one of the cool things that this little experiment did, they basically took bacteria colonies and they just kind of like spread it out everywhere. And then over time, they saw where the bacteria was coalescing. And it looks almost exactly the same way that our cities were designed. They have the same sort of highway structure of ferrying nutrients into the main colony and things like that. And so that's something that's inherent in just our biology all the way down to single cell organisms. So when you talk about the idea of redesigning cities, either in the future or what we have now, like where do we draw that line between the volume of people that we have that coalesce to an area and the access to resources that require those people? Like, do you want to spread them out more? Do you want to have more resources coming in and then replenishing of the resources outside? Like what are your thoughts there?
So that's actually really interesting. That kind of opens up a whole new thing where, interestingly enough, and it's hard to believe based on the world we live in now, we have the knowledge to create such an abundance of resource that the idea of like scarcity almost, I don't want to say doesn't exist, but if we took a place like New York and redesigned it with a clean technology where we had, um, we had rooftops with greenhouses, and we restored riparian zones in the water. We restored the seashores and things like that. Not not only would those cities have the resources to do it, but we could handle more people than we do now. Like, it's not natural for so many people to be so condensed, but it's being artificially allowed, I guess would be the best way to put it, because we haven't put the necessary resource generators in to allow that many people. But so naturally right now I would say we have to spread the cities out, and we're kind of seeing that right now. Actually, like, New York is having somewhat of a mass exodus, and as well as LA and other large cities across the country are having somewhat of a mass exodus, with suburban housing prices coming up and things like that. And I think record number of apartments are uninhabited in Manhattan right now. But if we put the resource generators in there, where we put trees, where we put just open fields where just plants can actually grow and things like that, and we taught people about how to utilize those resources properly, and we would also just have to slow down. Like, we would have to change the way we live to fully utilize the resources properly. But it involves, because like you said, the cities somewhat almost are based on how we evolved and how our single cells run, but we also are used to having more things around. Like, for example, I mean, just the number of trees 200 years ago was incredible, almost double what we have now. I know right now they say we have more trees than we ever had. That's somewhat, when you start keeping those records right after some of the biggest logging humanity's ever seen, that's somewhat of a hard way to compare it. But
yeah,
think we need to put resource generators in, whether it's food, whether it's clean water, whether it's wild spaces. And these areas can handle that amount of people. We just need to give them, we need to put the wheel in motion, I guess would be the best way to put it, by actually planting the trees and restoring these watersheds and the waterfronts and places like that. I think then not only will we have cleaner air, we'll see the reduction of pollution with either stricter laws and more trees to absorb carbon and things like that. But people, I think, inherently do not want to destroy the place they live in. So I think when we invest and create these just either beautiful waterfronts or things like that, I think people, as life slows down and they have more time and they really are more okay with themselves and their surroundings, will do more to, and again, this is somewhat, I'm just speculating, but this is what I've seen and what I believe, will do more to enhance and protect the places they live in. So I think the pollution problem will go down, the food production problem will go down, clean water will be much more available, things like that, heat. And, with the greenhouses, we can produce enough heat to heat a whole apartment building easily, just with a couple rooftops and solar panels. And Elon Musk, for example, with cities getting larger, we can't really build up any more than we have. Like, theoretically we could, but it wouldn't be practical. But tunnels are a very underutilized system right now. And yes, it's not exactly natural, so we're kind of stepping out of the range of what is natural and what is not. But to produce less roadways, go underground. He started what's called the Boring Company, actually, and it's somewhat of a conceptual board of people that are looking into putting tunnels under Los Angeles to deal with the traffic problem. And again, Solar City, I hate to sound like I'm being like, oh, Elon Musk, because it's so hyped up in memes and things like that. But the things he is doing are incredible. You look at Solar City and stuff. Solar power is our best bet at renewable energy. Wind is really, in my opinion, not going to be practical on a mass scale. But solar power, geothermal power, things like that. Hawaii sits on top of a volcano. We could tap enough energy from those volcanoes without really doing any sort of natural disturbance to really power almost all of Hawaii, is what the studies have shown. Obviously, again, for anyone watching this, a lot of this is conceptual. And yes, there's a ton of data and a ton of research that needs to be done. But the things we show now are showing that it is possible. We just need to start implementing them. And really the only thing holding it back is preconceived notions and capital to get it started. And that's where people like Elon Musk, for example, come in, where he has the capital to start the Boring Company, Solar City, things like that.
Yeah, really quick, Devin, I know you probably got a question here, but there's the show on Netflix. It's Zac Efron's show. Have you ever seen it?
I've heard. I have not seen it though. I've sadly been a little too busy.
Yeah, it's hit or miss. But there's one episode where he actually goes to New Zealand and he goes to these geothermal locations where they're harnessing the energy of these massive plots of geothermal area. And New Zealand in 20 years has taken their energy from being 80% reliant on coal and outsourced energy to be 100% self-sufficient. I mean, their population is a fraction of any other country's for the size of land that they have to be able to mine and resource, but they use all of the resources within that area. So, I mean, I think that it's your idea that we could definitely use the volcanoes in Hawaii or the San Andreas Fault and harness those energies along the West Coast or all across the East Coast. I mean, we have these massive geothermal areas that aren't even tapped, that are like really that are very deep underground. We could definitely take those and use those to sustain the cities that we already have.
Absolutely. And a part of what we need to do is just stop. I mean, the best way to get out of a hole is to stop digging. You know what I mean? And
that's true.
Like the best thing we can do right now is to run with what we know works. And I mean, for example, like California's wildfires are 100%. Let me rephrase this. The extreme damage that they are doing is 100% preventable. Not only by differently plotting out how we build cities to be more fire safe, but also just an understanding of how the natural cycle works. And I mean, for California, part of the reason California is in the pickle that it is they basically just stopped cutting wood, which obviously you don't want to over harvest timber and clear cut, but fires are a very natural part of the cycle there in the West Coast, but anywhere really. But if you cut that off for 100 years and you don't allow fires and you continuously do fire suppression, it's just it's like a pressure gauge. If you have a little bit of steam coming off the pressure gauge, the thing is going to run for a long time. If you plug that up and just crank it up, it's going to blow. And that's what I think our government, like, we need to vote in, or basically at this point force our government to look at the way it is treating our environment, because it is not only a matter of national security, it's a matter of just homeland protection, personal health, mental health, education, the obesity problem. I mean, I can go on and talk about where redesigning our cities and having more ecologically friendly world is not only more environmentally sustainable, but it's more profitable. We can create more resources. That inherent is profit. Money is simply resource in a agreed upon form. And if we create these more resources, we can deal with the wealth gap and we can deal with other issues that come with money and poverty and things like that. So yeah, you're 100% right.
Yeah, just to keep the ball rolling on, I guess, environment and other things that are affected by it. Interesting, we're talking about another country here outside of the United States, but Japan actually did a couple studies on how just taking their subjects and putting them out in nature did a lot of benefit for their mental health. And I'd argue that would apply in any other country for any other human being. I noticed I did a little deep dive on your Instagram, and at the top it has a hashtag mental health advocate. And I couldn't have you on here without talking about this. But could you just tell us a little bit more about how you got into mental health advocacy and things like that?
Absolutely. So, I appreciate you bringing it up. I think it's an important thing to talk about, you know. Well, it started a few different ways. I can't really pinpoint exactly what caused it. I don't believe there is a particular cause. Um, a mixture of the environment I grew up in, which was stressful, to put it in a in a nice way, um, caused me to struggle with a variety of things. I was bullied extremely badly. I switched schools because of it at one point. Um, so I dealt with a lot of mental health issues myself. I had a lot of run-ins with the law. I had a lot of just general negativity, just very upset. Part of the reason I found fitness outdoors was because of that. Um, Fitness did help, but it also, in a way, did make it worse because I hadn't dealt with those issues. And fitness is an incredible tool for dealing with mental health. But if you're not dealing with it in another way, it will make it worse. And I can almost guarantee that for a lot of people, and Cole could probably speak to that. He knows like fitness can also really, really help. But if you're not really looking at the root causes and dealing with self-esteem and stuff, it can make it worse because you have a cat with a bad temper. That's one problem. Next thing you got a 260-pound adult with a bad temper on, as much like 100. It's just every drug he can get his hands on, steroids and things like that. That's going to bring out that bad part of his personality, or just self-esteem issues. With people not liking how they look, either they think they're too thin or too big. So fitness at the time did make it worse because I hadn't dealt with my problem. So now I was just a kid with a bit of an anger problem, very depressed. And now at the time I was being bullied so badly I could do something about it. And that I didn't handle it exactly the way I should have. I just basically just went and knocked like 4 people out. And that taught me, I was like, I need to get a grip on this. Like, this is not a path I want to go down. So in my teens, I realized like, all right, I need to get a grip on my mental health. So through a variety of good friends, family I had talked to, therapy, personal experience being outside, I started to get more of a grip on my mental health. And I believe that coincided. I don't know exactly if it which caused the other, but I know they coincided with each other, of just finding out who I was. And I believe that once we know who we are, a lot of the mental health issues they're not going to disappear, but I think the issue is a lot more manageable, because once we have that self-worth, we can really, like, okay, was this person calling me fat or too skinny or weak or whatever? Was that really something I believe about myself? And the answer, obviously, if you have a good self-worth and you're like, no, I'm here right now, I'm happy with who I am as an inherent person, and I'm on a journey and I understand progress and I'm not comparing myself to other people, whether that's in your job, in your home life, in your fitness life, on Instagram or social media. You can start making better decisions about how you talk to yourself, what you allow people to say to you, and who you allow in your life. So I went through that journey where I started realizing, like, okay, is this something I truly believe about myself? And if it is, say it is true. Say I don't know, say someone said that I was depressing. Like, okay, I inherently know that I'm a good person. I have value. Maybe I am being negative. How can I work on that? And like that kind of self-worth, I believe, allows you to deal with things that in down the road would cause mental health issues. Where if someone had just told me I was depressed, I'm like, yeah, I'm a depressing person, I suck, like, and I just hate myself for it. That kind of stuff really will weigh on you after a while. So finding myself, I believe, was essential to my mental health journey. And I like to help people with that by being authentically myself, or as much as I can be, as much as I can, like, literally just be myself to people. And it's hard to explain, like, to just give 100% of yourself to people. I found that I'm advocating for mental health because when people see that I'm comfortable with who I am, they are comfortable to be themselves with me. And I noticed that has an effect on people, and it will inherently make them, if it doesn't, it's not obviously, again, not going to make it disappear, but it will I notice it does kind of put a twinkle in their eye when they are themselves and they tell me about their interests in the things they really like, that they might not think anyone cares about or wants to hear, and I watch them start go on that journey. And I'm a big advocate of therapy. I'm a big advocate of talking to a professional. I'm not a professional by any means. I've gone and done certification courses in mental health to help identify crisis situations. But the first thing I tell people is, all right, well, my first thing is you should talk to a therapist, but as a person, I am here for you, not a professional. As a person, I am here for you. And that's kind of where that mental health advocate came from. And I think where I grew up, at least, especially in the time period I grew up here, it was a very aggressive or toxically masculine culture, I guess is the best way to put it, where you didn't talk about how you felt, you didn't complain, you didn't say that you were unhappy, you just dealt with it. And that, again, I think is a big problem in a lot of rural farming communities, especially, obviously everywhere, but I see it. Maybe it's because I grew up with it. I see it the most in those communities. And again, I'm talking about men here, not because I don't think women's mental health is important. It's just I have experience with men's mental health, obviously being a man and knowing mostly men. So I just talk about my experience, I guess. But being my authentic self around those people garners a lot of attention, not necessarily all of it's positive. But at the end of the day, I see that people are more comfortable to be themselves around me. And just like anything else, once you get the wheel turning, if they're more comfortable to be themselves around you, they might, take the leap and try to be themselves at work or try to be themselves with their family or their friends, and realize that it's okay to be yourself. And it's more than okay, it's essential. And I guess that's how my advocacy started, is simply just being heart to heart with people. I'm not, I'm not a professional. I can't diagnose people or anything like that, but I can sit down and talk to you for a couple hours. That's for sure.
Yeah, man. Thank you for sharing that. It's like that tool that you're using is something that is very powerful. People want to be connected with. We seek the connection with other people. We are a social species, no matter how much no matter how much we talk about introvert versus extrovert and all of that. We're a very social species, one way or the other. And it is important that people have somebody that they can not necessarily look up or look down to, but just look directly at. And yeah, I really appreciate the way that you're going about that, and it's important. And it's not even it's in a way that bolsters everybody at the same time that you're able to take care of yourself. It's not something that requires any extra effort, it seems like, and that's and that's the kind of thing that I really enjoy seeing. So yeah, that's great, man. Thank you for sharing that.
Absolutely. Yeah. I guess the little quote, I guess, that I don't know if I thought of it, I don't know if it's a paraphrase of something I saw a long time ago. When you are so self-reliant that you can meet your needs to an excess, you have nothing to do but give to other people. And that's why I believe self-reliance is absolutely so important, whether it's in fitness, in the outdoors, in your personal or professional lives, in your mental health, your physical health. I think when you are producing in abundance, I don't believe you have anything that you should be doing besides giving.
That kind of goes back to that environmental aspect of our resources and all of that in our cities. Our cities, because they get so compact and we have all of these excess of resources outside that have to go into the city. If we just teach these people or design these cities in such a way that people become self-reliant within that city, the places that have to give can start giving everywhere else. And it really, that's a global thing. The globalization of our economy, of our mental health, of our community is very, very important. So
Absolutely.
Let's see. We just got a couple of minutes left. So real quick, I actually just wanted to. I know you're a huge reader and you love looking into just everything. What kind of books have you've been reading lately?
Lately, I've been on 3 books. They've kind of taken me a little bit longer than normal because like I said, I've been a little busy lately. Woodcraft and Camping by Nessmuk, who was a turn of the century outdoorsman who kind of looked at the outdoors in a new way for that time period. I think it's a good read, whether you're interested in the outdoors or not. It talks a lot about minimalism, being happy with yourself, using your surroundings to your full advantage. I believe it's an incredible book. It does shed a lot of really cool light, not only into history, but into the outdoors. Another book that I've been reading is Sharing Nature with Children. I'm most likely back into teaching here pretty soon after this move. So I want to, again, be a better teacher. And obviously that's a never ending journey. And this is a unique, I'm sorry, I can't recall the author's name off the top of my head. I could probably send it to you later if you wanted to put the author in attachment to what I'm talking about. But it basically talks about how to identify certain archetypes that we'll see in children and how to best engage them with the outdoors. Obviously every child's unique, especially but there are certain archetypes that we can see to at least start to tailor an approach to give us like a direction to go. And that's been really interesting to me. It's got a lot of like games and fun examples and stuff that you can do with that. And then I'm also, this is an audiobook. I'm listening to two of them right now. Principles by Ray Dalio. He is the founder of Bridgewater Capital. It's one of the largest investment firms in the world, if not the largest. It's in like the top 3. It's very large. He talks a lot about work principles and finding out who you are and working with people. It's a lot of social interaction principles and self-discipline, and it's very interesting. I like it a lot. It does tie over into the financial side of my interests, which is something I do like. So it's
again?
I'm sorry, what?
What was the name of the book again?
It's called Principles by Ray Dalio. I have the audiobook version, and I believe I couldn't tell you how long it is, but the audiobook's about 11 hours. So it's very in-depth read on just principles, like ways to live and deal with things, and principles that are very flexible and can be created and tailored to each person's specific life. And then and the other one I was reading is How to Influence People and Win Friends by J.D. Rockefeller. It's a little bit more salesy. It's a little bit more on the side of business. However, it does teach you a lot about how to interact with people and how to come to the best possible conclusion using either your goals or their goals, or if it's a group of people, and how to de-escalate and things like that, which are always important, because a lot of people, and I don't think it's, so obviously I believe in personal responsibility, but a lot of people live in an escalated mindset in today's culture. They're very tense. They're very ready to jump off at any point because that's just how they're taught to be. They're just like a spring that's just compressed all the time. And it kind of teaches you how to decompress that spring in people to really get to the heart of that person. And again, he uses his more from a business perspective, but also how to market and network with people. But I think it transfers into all aspects of life. So those 4 have been kind of equally taking up my time. And I think they're all very unique and interesting.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that. Definitely have to check in some of those. And for the listeners and the viewers, those will all be in the description for sure. So you'll be able to check those out.
Awesome.
Devin, do you have any other questions before we start to wrap
I
up?
had one more question. This is one I had to ask you while we had you. As I was going through your Instagram, I saw you had a caption. And if you don't follow Mario already, you should follow him. He's got some amazing content. It's funny. It's interesting. It's educational. All of it in between. But there was a caption you had about the first time you took pre-workout, and I think the listeners have to hear about that story because I'm a caffeine junkie, and this is a good story.
Oh yeah, that was a moment in my life I'll never forget. First time I took pre-workout, it was towards middle school. I have to look. I found an old picture that reminded me of the story, so that way I can figure out exactly when it was. But basically, this was like when pre-workout was first starting. Like, and I was a young teenager. I was like 14 or 15 years old at the time. I bought the Muscle Farm Assault, I believe it was called. It's like the fruit punch. It was back when the scoop was like this big on just started. And I had dislocated my shoulder a couple of weeks before. So it was like when I was first getting back into working out, I was like, I want to take it to the next level, you know? I took 2 scoops of it. had absolutely no caffeine tolerance by this point in my life. I don't even think I ever drank a cup of coffee. I was just sweating profusely. I did air karate in the mirror for like hours because I couldn't even bring myself. I just had to like move because I was like, if I don't move, I will die. So I did karate in the mirror for a couple hours, and then it finished because I threw up, and then I fell asleep for like 16 hours.
Oh my God, that's hilarious. That's a hilarious story.
That's awesome. That sounds about right, dude. It's a good thing, but they don't make pre-workout like they used to. I think that's an important change that has been made. I mean, you probably hear all of these stories and you see memes and stuff about the old jacked formula, the original Enema Explode, and all of those things. Like,
yeah, I mean, it was the Wild West. It was a lawless wasteland of supplements at that point. It was just whatever we could find, and we'll just chuck it in here and we'll see what happens. And I was a teenager at the point, which is the absolute worst time to have access to something like that, for a variety of reasons. I'm sure health as well, but I was hooked. Once I took that, I was like, this is going to be a problem for the rest of my life.
yeah, that's awesome, man. Well, hey, we'll probably wrap it up here. Let's right at about an hour. So we really appreciate you coming on, man. This is definitely it's been a great conversation. Loved hearing about your experiences, your life experiences. Thank you for sharing everything. And I can almost guarantee that Devin and I would love to have you on again sometime in the future, talk more about some of this stuff, because there's a lot of deep dives we can make into some of these topics. So.
Absolutely. Thank you guys so much for having me. I know I go into kind of a lot of rabbit holes and stuff. So yeah, I would love to talk to you or anyone who sees this. I mean, my messages are always open. I love talking to people. So I'm very grateful for the experience, and any experience that comes from it, I will also be extremely grateful.
Awesome. Yeah, well, definitely, again, check out Mario's Instagram page. I'll put the link in the description and everything. So go check him out. And yeah, thanks again, Mario. I appreciate you joining.
Thanks. You have a great day.